Alright, he's British. Okay, porter, a beer originally crafted in London. This one comes from Aleworks, a microbrewery in Her Majesty's colony of Williamsburg, Virginia. At least, was a colony before we kicked those redcoats out. And I've got Scotch, Earl Grey, and a t-shirt advertising a nautical-themed brewery. So that's a drunken navy. From all this, something should count as cultural appropriation. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, InaneDragon, and today's video was brought to you courtesy of evil social justice warriors. That's right, Chrisiosity made the tactical blunder of bringing me up in a positive light online, leading to a visit to my channel by this fellow, Social Justice Warrior 101. He's been polite to me, so I plan to reciprocate in this video, which is a response to his take on the whole Skeptics at Vidcon thing. As I'm technically grouped with the anti-SJWs due to the heavy overlap with the Skeptosphere, I'm philosophically obligated to insult him at least 3 times during the course of this video. Don't take it personally, Mr. Warrior. It's the only way to turn a profit in this genre. I'm going to be skipping parts of SJ's video and speeding it up where I can without losing audio fidelity because he talks about as much as I do. This is because there are a number of times where I could just say, yup, that about sums up my thoughts. Or, well, I don't know these people well enough to have a position on that. Hopefully, some of those at VidCon will take the time to watch SJ's original video, as should you, my dear listeners, and make their own responses. Just don't be a dick when you go watch his video. You're all adults with the ability to make your own decisions and mistakes, but I'm a fan of actually hearing both sides of an argument. That will never happen if you rush off onto someone else's channel to scream cuck at them a dozen times, half a dozen at most. This goes for anyone who checks out Chrisiosity's video too. The insults are my job, after all. With all of that boring stuff out of the way, the floor is yours, SJ.
Giddy from their perceived success and chastened by the idea that the internet is actually made up of real people who might be worthy of respect, we are now being told that the skeptic community post-VidCon wants to engage constructively with SJWs or advocates of social justice. That many content creators want to put the ponage culture and petty insults that are a feature of anti-SJW videos behind them.
Other than to introduce your video, SJ, I wanted to show this clip just to acknowledge that there have always been elements, though not always as vocal or strong-willed as I think they should be within the Skeptosphere, who want less ponage, more critical thinking. Teal Deer comes to mind as one of the earliest to admit that while ponage might be good for morale amongst those who oppose social justice, if it's to be refuted, it will be with research, evidence, and ideas. And then there's Wizard of Cause, Greg and June, all 3 of whom you reference right after this clip for their post-VidCon statements. Greg and June have on various occasions done live streams and maintained friendships across party lines, as it were, well before VidCon. And Wizard of Cause has many similar calls for dialogue to the one that he made after VidCon prior there, too. Lol. SJWs can't research. There, that's one insult down.
Regardless of my beliefs, we live in a world that doesn't reward peace, compassion, and positivity. If you look at the professions that require these qualities, you will notice they barely exist, or those professions are underpaid. The same principle operates on this part of YouTube. Drama. Us versus them. Negativity and demonization sells. Profit is good, whether it's from AdSense, Patreon, or Candid. I've worked in a number of jobs in a number of countries and have a clear understanding of the way it works. Most of us will be forced to work jobs that we hate in order to be paid. We will be forced to tell lies or make compromises by working for companies whose practices or managers we wish we could reject. It is this understanding, or lens, that I'm using to examine the anti-SJW community on YouTube.
You had to remind me about management and working for money. Now it feels personal, you bastard! It's a fair approach to the question. None of us should ignore the pressure to produce content that turns a profit. Many, myself included, do this because of a mixture of personal entertainment, a desire to spread good ideas while inhibiting bad ideas, and perhaps even to learn something new by putting our beliefs out there for public scrutiny. But making some cash off of it can at least defray the investment costs, even if it's not needed. And perhaps we dream of more, of doing this full-time. And those who are full-time content creators have to worry even more than any company about upsetting the consumer. It's a fact of the matter. Make content that everyone supporting you hates, you will be looking for work. So, SJ, you're not wrong. I'm getting sick of calling you SJ. We're going to go with Orwell, since you've stolen his visage, just like I've stolen this fat-ass human to be your conduit to the internet. Shit, I'm not doing well with the insults. Let's move on already!
A community that is popular or profitable enough to be used by or to attract those who seek profit and lulls, without regard to compassion or positive advocacy. Until now, at least. But what of SJWs, you say? Surely they are subject to the same motivations. With the exclusion of a tiny number of corporate or feminist super channels, they are not. In real life, the vast majority of the YouTube social justice community represents the real-life equivalent of voluntary work, believing in a cause and being paid travel expenses and lunch. Even if we are not better people, as many of us believe ourselves to be, having the interest of the oppressed in mind, the SJWs just don't have the audience numbers to attract profit seekers.
Even though this is a clip I could have cut on the grounds of, I agree, social justice is not a for-profit entertainment business at this scale, I've left it in because too many people that I talk to in both the Skeptosphere and anti-SJW club seem convinced that social justice is damned profitable. And to these people I wish to point out that you're doing just what you accuse the SJWs and race realists of doing with the wage gap and IQ, respectively. You're looking at averages of a demographic and applying them to the individuals making up that demographic. Even some of the smaller skeptic and anti-SJW channels can not only get a decent number of patrons, they can successfully merchandise the brand. The average profit amongst the Skeptosphere may be far below the SJW's average profit, but that's because we don't have giant mega celebrities who just happen to be vocal SJWs or feminists on the side. For every Paul Feig making millions off of movies with a feminist message, there are a dozen Orwells sitting in their bedroom, making next to nothing through AdSense, merchandise, or Patreon. Yes! Bedroom feminist always works!
It's a similar story with those I call out-group skeptics. It isn't lucrative to be skeptical of everybody on a platform that is so fragmented. As has been noted by numerous members of the skeptic community over the past 6 to 12 months, there has been a lack of material for their content creators. A number of what they would call bedroom feminists have either been driven from YouTube after being mobbed by large anti-SJW channels, or have left after realizing that there is no constructive debate to be had. It leaves anti-SJW content creators, better known for pwning individuals rather than dissecting and rebutting ideas with source material, struggling for content.
Crap! Orwell's onto us! Someone, unleash the MGTOWs to distract him! That being said, this is a point where I flatly disagree. You're building the argument that calls to engage are based on attempting to replace pwnage as a profit model with debate. But if their previous content relied heavily on pwning bedroom feminists, their patrons and fans won't want to hear reasoned debate or discussion, nor will the social justice crowd be repeat customers to conversations where they just get mocked constantly. Fox News isn't going to have debates that are honest with the left and progressives because their fans will desert them. And other than feminists or controlled opposition, no one continues to accept an invitation after the third time O'Reilly calls them a moron. Which is probably why I haven't seen Undoomed, Satirician, or Drunken Uncle calling for dialogue and debate. Undoomed uses YouTube to vent because he can't publicly voice his views. It's his safe space, and other people who need an outlet get a laugh. Drunken Uncle is a comedian, perhaps sometimes a mean one, but he's explicitly not here for serious debate. And Bering has always invited feminists and SJWs to his channel, though I don't watch his live streams enough to know how he actually treats them, so we'll set that aside. The only pair that I can think of who seemingly changed their tune, going from just trashing on others to encouraging dialogue, are the Worski brothers. And if memory serves, they attempted to contextualize this by explaining that they've always wanted dialogue, but didn't see it as much of a possibility before Vidcon.
None of this is anything new. Those who have been around on YouTube long enough will recognise how this so-called marketplace of ideas has become saturated with those proclaiming themselves to be atheists debunking Christians. In the end, the Christians retreated from debate or melted away from YouTube. As some atheists turned to making videos about social change, a larger group emerged, which became the YouTube skeptic community as we know it today. The latter spent their time attacking the former, and any individual online or real person advocating social justice or a progressive agenda.
This here's one point that I feel needs to be stressed, and more to the internet public at large than to you, Orwell. Those creationists and the crazy religious nuts? They're back. And they're involved in politics as well as social media content. Some of them are foundational members of the alt-right. One of them is our vice president. Another is our secretary of housing and urban development. Betsy DeVos has long been intertwined with the intelligent design movement. If you consider yourself a Skeptospherian, why are you spending so much time on the social justice sorts and completely ignoring the resurgence of the religious right online and off? Give Trump 1 or 2 more Supreme Court picks, and we could well have a Supreme Court that agrees with Justice Thomas on the implicit Christian nature of our country. This is a man who has long supported the idea of giving Christian religious institutions federal and state monies, saying that that is constitutional, while denying the constitutionality of giving that same money to other religious organizations doing the same goddamn things. Are the ideas undergirding feminism and social justice with which we argue unimportant? No. Should they be ignored? No. But they are not the all-consuming Goliath of our modern era. The culture war, if there is one, is not with them so much as it is with theocrats. Whether they be Christian, Muslim, or some crazy cockamamie thing. Right then. Say something stupid so I can mock you for it, Orwell. I'm shy on points, and we're a third of the way through your video.
Amid this crisis for views and content within the anti-SJW community, the purported red pilling of Lacey Green was an absolute godsend. Short term, it provided big name content for the community, and longer term, it would help the formation of a narrative that feminists were defecting to the anti-SJWs. It could provide the illusion that the war against social justice was being won.
I'll be honest, I was happy when Lacey took the turn she did. It's actually part of what made me decide to start following Chrisiosity, Ranting Feminist, Tim Blake, and a few others on social media of that general persuasion. It shook me out of the bubble that I had been starting to form after a year and a half of engaging with people on YouTube and social media, seeing what looked like a lot of poorly thought out ideas coming from incredibly angry and hateful people who simply refused to engage, to the point where people just gave up and started mocking them. With those more reasonable from the social justice or feminist side looking like the moderate Christians giving cover to fundamentalists, which is to say that every time some anti would hold up an angry feminist calling all men evil, whether they insulted the aforementioned feminist or argued against the ideas presented, the response I would hear from the social justice side of YouTube was, "Not all feminists. When they call you sexist, what they really mean is..." and all sorts of other diversions. Yes, both sides have their underbelly, and I don't doubt that the Skeptosphere looks the same way from your side of the street. I'm just trying to offer up some context for what Lacey stepping forward and committing to debate and discussion looked like from over here. It probably made this video possible, if we're honest. I'm not going to get into the profit motive or winning the war angle, because that gets into guessing what everyone's thinking. And plenty of those more involved in this are strangers to me. Some of the content creators closer to my size, creators with whom I talk, certainly saw it as a positive sign for winning the war or as a cash cow, but far more of them reacted the way I did, by realizing that other options besides fighting a war were even on the table.
But the thing that I found incredible about some of the comments made by anti-SJW content creators post Vidcon is how they describe upon attending a panel or meeting one another and some fans, triggering a realization that there are real people with real human emotions behind the monikers or usernames. People who are potentially vulnerable if dogpiled or treated cruelly. It staggers me, I mean honestly totally boggles my mind, that some haven't been able to appreciate that every YouTuber, Twitter user or online interaction is with a real person that feels. What kind of bubble do you have to live in to not understand this? That it takes a real life meetup to convince people to treat others with a measure of dignity, even if they hold opposing views. No hyperbole, this baffles me. I understand the culture of shitposting and ponage, but I'd always felt that people understood that they are ridiculing or shitting on real life people, but did it anyway, because they found it funny or would benefit them in some way.
This was actually one of the big things that made me decide I should make a video instead of just posting a comment. The reality is we're limited creatures with more than one type of understanding rattling around in our brains. We can know something, but that doesn't mean we understand its implications in here, if you get my drift. For example, we can hear about terrible tragedies happening. We can know for a fact that thousands of people died in a hurricane. But for most of us, we don't comprehend it. At least not emotionally, and that's a good thing. Can you imagine if we felt every death we learned about the way that we feel the death of our neighbor, even if we didn't know the guy or thought he was a jerk? If we aren't sociopaths, we all will have to at least deal with the emotional hit of confronting our own mortality. Now, try doing that for every person who died in the last 24 hours. On average, it's 141,000 a day. I'd probably kill myself if I just had to be emotionally invested in every death that I hear about on the news, beyond the most superficial regret or perhaps maybe a bit of anger at the injustice before getting on with my day. The same is true, just of how we treat other people with whom we barely interact or don't interact with face to face. Even as we know intellectually that the lady filling our orders at the restaurant is a human with her own life and troubles. We don't process it and get pissed when she's slow to refill our drinks. But take 2 or 3 days to sit down and talk with them. Now we're inside of our monkey sphere with them. We not only see them, but we feel them. We connect. And yeah, it's like realizing for the first time that there's a real person behind the screen. I know it felt that way when I met a fellow YouTuber in my own neck of the woods for the first time. And he and I were already on friendly terms online. No need to cross the aisles here. I know for a fact that if I met you in person, Orwell, it would change things, at least on my end. And I'd buy the first round. It's all about the monkey sphere. Our brains appear capable of only handling around 150 to maybe 300 relationships. That is, people whom we legitimately treat as human before we just get overwhelmed. It may even well be the root of tribalism within our species. Damn! Shoulda worked in a monkey joke!
What would it take for me to believe this offer for engagement is genuine? First of all, insults. I'm not about to say no insults. I'm saying that there is a difference between calling somebody a tosser or a prick and insulting somebody with the intent to hurt or humiliate them by deliberately referring to their physical appearance or encouraging others to do so. Even then there is scope. If an anti is dealing with a Kevin Logan or somebody like myself, you can probably get away with worse insults in jest. But ableist or transphobic insults are immature, unoriginal, and may genuinely hurt somebody. Why would any decent person want to hurt somebody? Secondly, reputable sources. If you are going to provide informative videos, using sources in videos like the Daily Mail, Daily Express or Heat Street shows either laziness or a lack of intellectual capacity. If you want to talk about serious issues with us, let's debate properly using academic or respected sources, not the gutter press. This may seem like my dictating terms of the debate, but it's more than that. If you have respected sources that contradict a progressive viewpoint, you would be doing a service to skepticism and progressives in sharing it. Knowing the subject beyond the usual talking points is its own reward. Thirdly, likes and retweets on Twitter. Part of the problem on YouTube and Twitter is isolated communities. This is the final frontier. Like and retweet more videos from people outside of your community. If this becomes a habit, I'm willing to bet that communities will be less divided longer term.
God damn, I keep having to rotate drinks. I generally agree with these points. Everyone is going to have a different line in the sand on insults, of course, both in terms of what they're okay with dishing out and what they're willing to receive. For me, it's less the content of the insult than it is how much it overwhelms what else the person is saying and if the context is missing from the insult. I won't apologize for dropping a few fat jokes if I'm picking apart the argument of a fat acceptance video, but in context, I'm a pretty hefty fucker myself, and at this point their condition is directly related to the point that they're attempting to make. But mocking someone for being transgender when they're talking about how white people were grafted by Yakaru on the island of Patmos, what the hell? There's more than enough room and more than enough crazy to insult the bad idea and her thinking on that subject, and her being trans is utterly unrelated, so why bring it up? In short, insults in spirited debate will remain a complicated and divisive point, even for those attempting to bridge gaps. Where do we switch from reasonable limits to tone policing? I don't have an answer, because I think it will be different for everyone. You shifty-eyed potholer wannabe! On your point about liking and retweeting, I foresee a problem. Even if done in the spirit of debate and discussion, there will come times when the act of retweeting will lead to accusations of dogpiling. Just food for thought, since I'm no psychic.
Like, comment, share this video, or respond for fuck's sake. And if you disagree with me, think about why you disagree. Is it because you aren't really willing to change and to admit when you're wrong? If so, what is there really to talk about?
Consider this my response, you fart-faced, egomaniacal, bombastic British commie. Oh, come on! That only counts as one? Jeez. Anyways, I hope you don't mind my rather lame attempt to spice up what would otherwise have been a painfully dry response. I'm interested in hearing more of your thoughts on the topic and learning more about the theories put forward by social justice. I have kicking around here somewhere several books relevant to the topic that I do intend to get around to, including Feminism is for Everybody and Critical Race Theory, so don't bother recommending those too. Feel free to recommend more. I can't promise to read everything that you throw my way, but I will try and do what I can. To the rest of you, part 2 of The Wooed Goblin will be up sometime next week and a half tops. I hope to have an inane explanation of white fragility going up sometime afterward, but we'll see what happens. If you found this interesting, do the whole commenting, rating, sharing thing, and if you want more, be sure to subscribe, click the ding-a-lingy. I've got to shill that Patreon, so if you want me to improve my microphone quality, consider signing up. A link is in the description. Thank you all, and have a good night.